This video is brought to you by NordVPN. The Conservative Party is still going through a tough period. They're a party in office, but not necessarily in power, with polls reliably showing that their 13-year stint in number 10 is about to come to an abrupt end. This has had an understandable effect on party unity, with a variety of backbenchers and ministers trying to set out their stall and prove that they should be the one to take over from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak upon his inevitable election defeat next year. So in this video, we're going to have a look at just how divided the Conservative Party is, what the different factions are, and if the polls do prove to be correct, which one could take power from Sunak. Now, it's worth starting the video by discussing what we mean by factionalism in the Tory party. In essence, here in the UK, the main political parties are designed to be broad churches. The Labour Party grew out of the trade union movement and represents those generally on the left. This includes trade unionists and socialists, but also more centrist democratic socialists. The Conservative Party grew out of the old Tory party and generally represents those on the right. This includes libertarians who tend to be further right and the One Nation group, which tends to be more moderate. Generally speaking, these parties are accommodating of different factions, and the leadership of the main parties often switches and changes between the factions. For example, the more moderate wing of the Labour Party took control of the leadership in 1983 under Neil Kinnock, and spent the next decade and a half trying to change the structure of the Labour Party to reflect their political ideology. Under Corbyn's elevation to the leadership in 2015, he started moving the dial back, trying to make the party better reflect his more left-wing socialist ideology. Similarly, in the Tory party, across different time periods, different factions command control of the leadership. In 2005, David Cameron was elected as the leader of the party. He came from the centrist One Nation faction and set about trying to make the party more palatable to the electorate. He was keen to attach himself to environmental causes, and upon moving into number 10, he was keen to demonstrate his social liberalism when announcing plans to make same-sex marriage legal, although it's worth noting that this was a free vote in the Commons. Last year, a group from the right-wing Libertarian group seized control of the party, spearheaded by Liz Truss. She was keen to make clear her tax-cutting, small-state, more socially conservative, especially on trans issues, ideology. So both parties are composed of different factions that have achieved power at different points. The difficulty that party leaders sometimes have is controlling the faction that isn't in power. And indeed, this is something that the Conservative Party is really struggling with at the moment. To an extent, this is understandable too. Rishi Sunak, while not being from the same ideological bloc as David Cameron, is certainly more of a centrist, especially economically, than Liz Truss. But it was Truss that won the first Tory leadership election last year and won the support of the Conservative membership. Her resignation and the subsequent victory of Rishi Sunak angered the Libertarian wing of the Tory party, who felt as though their elected candidate had been forced out and that Sunak was elevated to the position without the members having a say. This frustration has been an ongoing issue for Sunak, who, for the most part, has been successful at suppressing backbench rebellions from this group. However, the recent Conservative Party conference in Manchester was a real demonstration of the size of this group. In many of the speeches made by Sunak's ministers, the audience was sparse and staffers actually resorted to trying to push people together to make the speeches look more popular than they were. Liz Truss's speech, however, was hugely popular, to the point that there were reportedly hundreds of people waiting outside the room she was due to speak in, as they couldn't get a seat. Now, no one is expecting her to make a big comeback or anything, but her ideology is clearly very popular amongst the Tory members. There are, instead, suggestions that someone from her Libertarian faction could, and quite possibly will, take over control of the party if and when Sunak loses the election next year. Some of these candidates were also quite clearly laying out their stall at the Tory conference. Suella Braverman is a key example of this. Even before the Tory conference, she was giving speeches in Washington, demonstrating a hardline approach to immigration and asylum. She continued this rhetoric into the Tory conference, describing the coming hurricane of immigrants. Some from the moderate wing of the party are concerned about this rhetoric, but know that she cannot be sacked, as the Trussite Libertarian faction of the party could begin to make moves against the Prime Minister if she was. She's clearly been positioning herself and is well positioned to take over from Sunak if he loses the next election. So it's clear that the Conservative Party has distinct factions, much like Labour. However, the key differentiation is that this factionalism is on display. For the most part, the moderate wing dominates the MPs, which is why Sunak has been selected as leader following Truss, and the Libertarian wing dominates the membership, who voted for Truss. It's not clear yet which of these factions will succeed in getting their candidate into the top job. To a large part, it depends heavily on what actually happens at the next election. If the Tories lose a lot of seats, for example more than 100, then the parliamentary party could well be entirely different to now. It's possible that in this scenario, many Libertarian candidates could retain their seats. Or conversely, perhaps the moderates are the ones that predominantly keep their seats. Whichever ideological faction is predominant after the election will be able to push their candidate through to the wider membership stage of the leadership vote, giving them a significant advantage. Overall, it's worth giving Sunak some credit for managing to keep control of the Libertarian faction and prevent it from causing him too much damage at this point. Of course, this faction did come out in force at the conference, but there is little suggestion that it could derail his government. Instead, they seem to be positioning to be his successor. Until the election, though, it's unclear whether they'll be successful in this aim. Only time will tell. Whatever the future may hold, it will always be important to protect yourself online. Fortunately, when it comes to your digital safety, NordVPN has your back. It's an unfortunate reality that online scams and phishing attacks are on the rise, with us constantly bombarded with emails from our banks, social media accounts, and annoying newsletters we forgot we even signed up to. It's easy to click the wrong thing. One weak link can compromise security and bring things crashing down. With the protection of NordVPN, though, you can use their threat protection features to identify potential suspicious links. Even if you did reach a suspicious website, NordVPN's data encryption tools would protect against a number of other attacks, like malicious man-in-the-middle breaches. Even if things do go wrong, NordVPN's dark web monitoring is always scanning for your details and passwords, and can actively notify you before you even notice. Plus, if you sign up to a 2-year plan using our link, you'll not only get a massive discount, but you'll also get 4 extra months totally free. We've been told that sometimes when people hear us talk about NordVPN, they open up a new tab and start searching, but they don't use our link. I'm certainly glad that they do use the service, but you only get the discount and you support the channel through that link. So if you're trying to improve our journalism by signing up for Nord, use our link when you do, and you'll get their great service at a discount.